All right, let's go.
Hi, everyone. It's Charlotte Baker Jackson, the Candid Recruiter, and welcome to another edition of Pivot to Next. I am really happy about today's discussion. This is the first discussion that I've done with someone who is a peer, and we have a really interesting story as we've both risen up along the ranks professionally as talent acquisition leaders. So I'm very excited to introduce my guest, Tanya Clare.
Hey!
Hi, Tanya.
How are you, Charlotte? Thank you so much for inviting me to have this conversation with you.
Yes, thank you so much for agreeing to sit and chat with me. I know so much is going on. You're a working mom and wife, and life is just crazy in general right now for all of us. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on my show.
Of course, the Candid miss it for the world.
Yes, yeah. Tanya and I have a really amazing story. We have a long history together.
Sure do.
And we first met at Ascent Media Group, a company that we both got our start essentially in recruiting at Ascent Media Group.
Absolutely.
Years ago, I'm not gonna tell our age, girl. I'm not gonna take it back to the actual year, but we got some time in this game.
It's true. It's so true. And I feel like, even though, like, when I think about my time there and everything, like, it feels like yesterday.
I know. I still remember it all.
Like, I really, like, it's very clear to me about everything, right? Like,
yes. So Tanya's a talent acquisition leader on the East Coast.
Yes.
Working in is it the research and advertising space right now?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that the industry that you would?
I would say, like, it's kind of actually hybrid of, like, market research.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, yes. But we started out together in media, in communications, and then moved into entertainment. So we'll get to that part of the story of how we really got on our recruitment path. So I was working as, I think at the time I was a generalist. I had just started and was more in a generalist role. I don't even think I had I just moved to talent acquisition. I just kind of decided, I was at that point in my career where I was doing everything and I needed to really find and focus on a specific path. And so I chose talent acquisition, and we were looking for a team coordinator at Ascent Media Group. And there was this amazing, vibrant young lady who came in and met with us. And immediately I knew she's the one. I don't even remember if we interviewed anyone else. Like, I just remember your interview. So these glasses are, so I just remember you coming in. You had such a great attitude, but also it was a no-nonsense attitude. And I always refer to myself as the no-nonsenser, right? Censor as in C-E-N-S-O-R, right? Because it's hard for me to censor myself. And you're the same way.
Right.
And so I instantly picked up on that.
Yes.
And loved it. And I feel like we have been sisters from that point. It was just like, I had a little bit more experience, and you would lean in to ask me questions, but then as you got more and more experience, I was like, I really need Tanya's opinion on this. And so we just worked so well together. And I'll always be grateful that I had you at the very beginning of my talent acquisition career.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I feel like for me, like, you have actually groomed me to be the recruiter that I am now. You know, like, just watching you in the beginning. Like, I just remember the first time, I don't know if you actually remember this, but you took me on like an actual intake meeting.
Yeah, you know my memory, 3 kids, girl.
Took me, I remember because this is when we were at Ascent Media, and you took me with you to kind of, it was a new person joining the organization. And so like you were going there to have the meeting, you know, to learn a little bit more about the business, observing how you took that initiative to build that relationship with that manager. And then I was just like, oh, okay, like,
that's the key, the relationship.
You know, this is kind of where you actually build credibility, you know, because
absolutely,
you know, if you do something that's out of the norm, because you could have easily took that call,
that meeting. No, it was always, it's always been important to me to be able to share as much information and knowledge as possible, because from those experiences, I always learn too. And so even though I had a little bit more experience in the game than you did initially at that time, you always ask great questions. You know, I always feed off of that, from that energy and that, you know, interest in gaining more knowledge. And you always had that. So it was always really inspiring and helpful to me. So we were at Ascent Media Group together.
Yes.
And we were talking, and there was an opportunity that came up to go to Fox for, there was an applicant system training.
For Virtual Edge.
Training. Virtual Edge.
Never forget it.
Are they still around?
I don't even know.
No?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Well,
I don't know.
Sometimes.
Yeah, there have been so many. And an applicant tracking system, for everyone listening who may not know, that is the system that recruiting team will use to receive your applications online, and it captures and stores all your information, including your resume. And so we always look at candidates who come into the applicant tracking system to see if you fit for our needs for any open position that we may have. So we decided to go to Fox to just for the day to
it was a demo
and to get that experience. And we were, you know, really eager to learn. And I remember we both sat in that room together. And I remember looking at you. I remember that room. We were all just sitting. It was a small room, and we were all just kind of sitting around the table, and we were like on a back bench or something. And we looked at each other like, girl, I like this place. And I remember we left that meeting and we said, we should look for jobs and opportunities here. This place seems amazing. It was like a college campus work.
Yes. Yeah, because he took us on a tour.
Yeah.
We were looking at all of this, and we were like, wow, like, oh. And I remember I said to myself when we left, and I don't know if it was in your car or my car, and I was just like, I'm going to work here.
Yeah. I remember we both were just like, we're going to work here. We're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Sure enough, I feel like it was maybe 2 or 3 months later. I don't even remember how it was within a brief amount of time. And I remember I had an interview, and then they were asking about, you know, who did I know? And I told that, you know, I knew that you were looking.
Right.
Because there was another opportunity. And so we both ended up getting hired.
Yes.
Within I think a week. We started within a week of one another at Fox. So that is an example of manifestation.
Absolutely.
Thinking about where it is you want to pivot to next.
Yeah.
Planning it.
Yeah.
Being strategic.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And then prioritizing your move. And it worked out.
No, it definitely does. I mean, you also have to do very well on an interview.
Absolutely. It ain't just about, right. I mean,
they interviewed very intensely.
They did. There was
a lot of
multiple people we met with. But even though it was an intense interview, I felt that it was a good cultural fit in terms of just the team.
Yes.
The people were very welcoming. You know, you can have an intense interview. I feel
right.
like I give an intense interview whenever I'm as an interviewer.
Right.
Very specific about what I'm looking for. I make it clear, you know, what I'm asking. But at the same time, I'm very conversational.
Yes.
And I think you're probably the same way.
Yes.
You know, because I think that it's important to have that conversation because it puts the candidate at ease versus question, answer, question, answer, question, answer.
Absolutely. You want it to be like a dialogue between two friends, because you can actually get more in that setting about actually what a person did. Because if you do the Q&A, right, they come scripted.
So rehearsed.
Right. And then they're like, you don't really get a feel of this person, you know, in regards to if they actually know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know if, you know, if you go a little bit more deeper, you can listen to certain situations and how they handle working in a certain environment and what they handle when they're confronted with certain things. Like, you know, that dialogue, that comfort that you provide when you are interviewing,
it opens up the candidate.
It opens it up.
Yes.
And it gives the recruiter, right, the ability to really recommend and really kind of push the hiring manager, you know, in the right direction. Because
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So let's go there. Let's elaborate more there. So what you're referencing is, you know, it goes back to what you said about when we went to the intake meeting.
Right.
So what a recruiter does is, you know, we're really looking, once we look at the resume, we'll probably do a phone screen or Zoom screen, you know, some type of video screening of a candidate to learn more about the true skill set, the basic, you know, checking off the boxes that we know we need for a certain position, whether it's years of experience, a specific system or tool that they utilize, etc. And we get a little bit of a feel about their personality.
Right.
But what we're also doing behind the scenes, and this is usually before we even move forward with the screenings in any conversation with the candidate, is we're meeting with the hiring managers and getting to know who they are. And the hiring managers are the people on the business side who are responsible for hiring against a specific job, right? So sometimes they're the leader of the team. Usually it's not the senior most person, but usually it's the person who will immediately be managing this person on a day-to-day basis, right? So we go and we meet with those people, and sometimes there are multiple people involved. That's part of, we come up with the hiring interview plan so we know who's involved at what point of the process, depending on level. But once we meet with, you know, the hiring team, we're able to really deduce and gather from that meeting what the key needs are for the role. And we also get a feel for what the hiring team is like.
Absolutely. And that's so important.
Yes.
Yeah. Especially in my line of work, like always kind of being in entertainment, being in advertising, and now even within market research, they're always kind of servicing like a client. And so, you know, so you always have to kind of think about that person's actual skill set and how they work well with others. And, you know, people always feel like, but I'm qualified for the job. But like, if you can't work with, you know, hiring manager A and hiring manager B in a normal, just daily conversation, that is going to bring not a positive work environment. And people, you know, and I know like the cliche where people are like, oh, it's about like fit and things like that. But it's also about being able to be who you are at work and being the best at work, right? And if you can't really be yourself in that interview because you're picking up vibes that yourself wasn't really
you want to be yourself in the interview, which basically makes you feel as if you were to join that team, you'd have to be guarded.
Correct. And who wants to do that for 40 hours a week?
Now, I will say this, though, to that.
Okay.
I think that sometimes that comes with time and getting more comfortable as a professional, right? Because there have been a few jobs that I've taken where I haven't felt great about the connection with the people I'd be working with.
Okay.
Knew that I'd learned something on that job that would be invaluable, that would leverage me to my next. So I knew that it was an opportunity that I didn't want to pass up. So it's interesting because, you know, as you get more and more experience, you begin to get a little more comfortable in your footing in terms of where you want to go, where you don't want to go, who you are as a professional, who you are, who you cannot be, you know, in a professional setting. And getting more comfortable choosing your opportunities based on that. And I wish I had known that and really thought about that at certain points in my career earlier on, because I probably wouldn't have made some of the same the same decisions to move into a specific position.
Wow.
And so I think that it does make sense. And so I'm so glad you brought that up, because I talk about that often too, the importance of aligning your jobs, the professional pursuit, with your personal self.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And knowing that if you are a creative person and you like to be in a team collaborative environment and you like to do something specific, and the role is more of a boxed in role that won't allow you to contribute your own ideas and things like that, then maybe that's not the right position for you. So the advice that you just gave is great, because it's, I think, telling people, you know, to prepare, even going into an interview, to know what to look for in terms of any alignment to your personality and the way that you know that you like to work. And factoring that in addition to just the culture, the job description, and what it is you'd be doing on a day-to-day.
I always tell people, like, especially like candidates, be prepared with questions. Interview them just like the way that they are interviewing you.
Right.
And I say this is because you want to make sure that you have the answers. You know, like, I think this is now a market where people have way more options of how to bring in income, right?
Absolutely.
Right. And so if this is going to be a place where you're going to spend so much time away from your family, you want to make sure that it's, you know, that it's you. And you may not always get, you know,
the real
of it, but like, I think if you ask the right questions, you can get the gist of what you're looking for. Because
even a hiring manager's willingness, or, you know, even to answer a question and how they respond tells you a lot.
It tells you a lot.
You know, and what they're willing to share.
Right. What they're willing to share, what they're willing to not share.
Information.
You know? Yes. And I think that's so important. I just think that's so important. Like, asking those questions and being prepared to hear something that may not be favorable.
Hello.
And also being—
But what better time for that to happen than in the interview?
Correct. And knowing, and you may leave the interview and say,
not for me.
This is not for me. And you can send a nice candid note to the recruiter, and, you know, depending on how that relationship is with the recruiter, you could be moved to another opportunity that same recruiter is working on, because sometimes it's just that person. And as human beings, we don't gel with everyone.
Yes. You know what's so interesting? I don't know if you remember this, but when I initially interviewed at Fox, it wasn't for a recruiting role. It was for a diversity and inclusion role.
Yes, I remember that.
And I met with the team and everything went well, but it ended up, it wasn't the best fit. Like, I didn't leave. I left feeling like, oh, these people seem great. But I didn't leave feeling excited necessarily about the work that was expected for that particular job, you know?
I mean, and then you also got to remember, and I don't want to throw out age at, but diversity and inclusion was still very new.
Still very new. And I do want to talk more about that later on in our
Absolutely.
conversation.
Absolutely.
That's an important issue
Yeah.
then and now, but even now I think it's being brought to the forefront because of everything that we're seeing with Black Lives Matter. And, you know, it's just the perfect time to talk about diversity and inclusion.
I think I remember, and then just to prove your point, so your relationship with that recruiter.
Relationship with the recruiter. Yeah, it was less than, I think, a week later.
So she said, we have an opportunity.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What would you think about this? You know, and I always say that to people, like, sometimes one closed door is just opening something that's going to be better for you.
Absolutely.
You know?
The perspective that you have to have. On my blog, on my website, candidrecruiter.com, I put a post up recently how an interview is simply an opportunity. People go into an interview thinking, oh, I got to get the job. I got to get the job. Yes, it would be nice if everything works out and you end up getting a job. But go into every interview experience thinking, I'm going to meet a new person. I'm going to learn more about the internal culture of a company. I'm going to meet people who can potentially lead me to another opportunity down the line, right? It doesn't always have to be the immediate solution to your career goals, you know? And sometimes it works out that way, and that's always great. But again, I always approach every interview as an opportunity to learn something. It could be going in, meeting someone, I realize it's not the job for me, but I also try to leave every interview wondering, or even asking the person I'm meeting with, is there anyone else in your organization that you think I should be in touch with or no? Especially if it's an informational interview, which a lot of people are willing to do nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, it's walking in and thinking, okay, well, what can I take from this to lead me to the next?
And I agree. That's one thing I encourage people daily. And I even encourage people to do that even within their own company that they're working in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't have to be something external. And it doesn't even have to be for a job that you may not be interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Take the meeting, learn, grow. You know, sometimes as we get in our roles, and like, we have to stay fresh on our skills. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, you know, interviewing and learning what other businesses and things like that do, that's an opportunity for you to take that information and use it, maybe in your current role, maybe for the next
down
job.
The line.
Right. I said, because in those interviews, it's like free jewelry. People are just giving you gems.
Yes.
That you can just collect and take with you in your little briefcase to the next meeting, you know?
Yes. I have that conversation a lot with candidates too, and employees, because when you think of the idea of development and growth in a promotion, the first two things that come to mind are money and title. Mm-hmm. And money and title aren't always options, especially now. I mean, companies are at a hiring freeze.
Correct.
Companies are not bringing in new employees at this time because of COVID. And
all the uncertainty
is unpredictable right now, and people are afraid to really continue to grow their employee population until things stabilize a bit in our world, right? Yeah. But I'm the same way. I always tell candidates and employees to maximize growth in multiple ways for yourself. So that could be getting a mentor in another department, just interviewing someone in another department. For us, it's meeting with different hiring managers. I don't know for you, but I'm sure it's been the same for you. That's been so eye-opening for me.
Oh, yeah.
Meet with hiring managers in so many different areas across so many different industries, because You know, it just helps you to learn about what different people are doing on a day-to-day, and it helps us find the right candidate match. But from an employee perspective, so many departments have learning and development teams. They have online systems that can be accessed by employees to learn. It could be something as simple as a tool like Excel or some type of management training. And when people aren't able to make a move financially or title-wise, level-wise, I still see that as growth. I see taking advantage of these programs as true growth, the best growth.
I say this all the time, and I always tell people, take advantage of the resources that your employer gives you.
Around you every day.
You know, because the only person who's benefiting from you is you. Mm-hmm. You can't lose. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can't lose. And the best thing that I feel like, as you are working in your career, you have to constantly learn and be open and willingness to gain information and challenge yourself, and being okay with saying, I don't know, but let me get back to you because I'm going to go find the answer. Right. Yeah. Especially like during these times, like I feel like for all the recruiters who may be experiencing like hiring freezes, I've been taking this time to literally sharpen up my sourcing skills, finding out what new tools are out there, getting to know what other recruiters are doing, what other companies are doing.
Having informational conversations with potential candidates, process mapping,
branding, you know, all of these things, like, you know, this is the opportunity that I have taken to like literally reinvent myself as a recruiter so that when we're out of this, like, yes, I'm still going to be, you know, good at what I do, but like now I'm going to be doing it a little bit different.
Yes.
You know, I'm going to have a different intent to make sure that I am, you know, using the tools that I learn, right, and applying it to my everyday, because, you know, we're in this world where work-life balance is very like the new cliche, but, you know, when you're given the tools and things like that to do that, sometimes we go back to our old ways, right?
And what you're doing by taking these steps is what many people say that they do, how they are, but they're not. And that's being strategic.
Correct.
Right? This is all adding to your individual professional brand.
Right.
And that's what it comes down to. When I hear candidates or employees say, and even candidates, when they're talking about their current circumstances.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I hear them say that they're not able to grow. They thought they'd be promoted faster. They thought that they'd be able to contribute more. And I always ask, well, what are some opportunities that you've created for yourself to still get fed in those areas, to grow and develop your skills so that you're not stagnant, you know, as you're frustrated with the way the company's working, that you're not stagnant and just getting caught up in your frustration and still not adding value and gems to your own growth and your own self-development.
I couldn't say it.
Self-directed your learning.
And you have to.
You mentioned that's what it is. Meeting with people, stepping outside of your comfort zone, looking for mentors, taking a class online through the learning tools that are provided by the employer.
Correct.
Looking into all the other incentives. How many times have we worked for places and had no idea that they had certain programs, that they had certain incentives and tools and things in place? I know earlier on in my career, I probably didn't pay as much attention to benefits and all the company perks and things like that I do now.
Right.
The main thing I want to know about. I mean, first, the bottom line is the money, right? But now we're at a point in our career where we know what we're worth.
Right.
It's an easy part of the conversation.
Right. That's the easy. Right. Now I need to know about your PTO,
Yes.
Right? I need to know
Sick
like,
leave.
yes, your sick
Maternity leave.
Maternity leave in my base. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
I think it's just so important that people, like, that is such an importance now. I want to know about the health insurance. I need to know.
Absolutely.
Right? How much?
Especially being a parent.
Right. I need to know, like, okay, how much is it going to be for me and my family? I need to know, what are you covering and at what costs? You know, and it's so funny.
Factoring in the co-pays. There's
I know
information to.
I hear this all the time from my peers, right? Where they're like, oh, they wanted to know what the benefit plans was. Like, come on, just take the job. I'm like, no.
Smart person.
No, because
ask about those things.
Right. And I've had people negotiate, like, if I don't take, look, they're like, if I don't take this benefit package, can y'all just give me
a little more money?
Pay? And we're like, I don't think so.
No.
But nice try, you know.
Yeah.
But that is something.
I've had the same.
But you do that in smaller companies. Like, to me, it's like, no. And I always encourage people, ask for what you want in the beginning. Yeah. Because once you get in,
ask for what you want. Hey, that's a whole nother show, because I just did I did a post about this recently, and I said I need to do a show about this with someone in compensation. So so I've had a lot of conversations recently about salary. I have done a few videos on it, but you saying what you just said about having that conversation up front, I am adamant about discussing salary at hello. When I have a screening conversation, I expect a candidate to be able to say, this is what I'm looking for, so that we can have that conversation up front. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Wouldn't you rather know up front if it's gonna work out? If it's gonna work out, or if it's not. Because
has California passed the law where you can't ask?
Yes, that is correct. We cannot ask what salary is.
Okay, perfect. Because New York is the same way.
But our work around that is simply, what are your expectations compensation wise?
Yeah.
And then going from there.
Yeah.
And people are very
comfortable. But to me, it's so weird now. Now you don't have to tell me what you're making. Cool. And you still tell me what you're making. My specific question is, what are you looking for?
What are you looking for? What do you want? And I appreciate when people are honest, but I also feel like it's easier for me to tell if they've done their research and really know that they're self-aware about where they are in their career, right? Yeah. Because I've had people who I know, especially in advertising. So again, a little background.
Yeah.
We kind of left the entertainment industry, went into advertising, and spent some time in that industry. And so most recently we've been in advertising, and then with Tanya in market research. So advertising is a very tiered
very
trajectory.
Yes.
Right? So there's not really any gray area.
No.
If you're an assistant, then you move to planner. Then you move to supervisor, or senior planner, then supervisor. Right. Then, so it's then AD, then a director. So it's already.
Yeah, they plan it out for you. They show you your growth.
Right. Which means it's good, because you know what your career path could be.
Right.
How long it will take to get there. And sometimes I think we move people too quickly along their career path, their growth path. That's a whole nother conversation as well.
Completely different.
We'll have to do a part 2 that's advertising specific. But it's also a way, we know what a planner, what a supervisor, what an AD, we know the range of what they're making.
Right, absolutely.
Planner, and you're asking for an associate director level compensation. We're calling your bluff. Like we know you're trying to pull our leg.
Right.
So it's important to still be honest when having that salary conversation.
Gotcha.
Right.
But I'm talking more like even at like between the range of manager to VP. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm always so surprised at the transparency. You know, because it's always like, I'm like, okay. And I could appreciate it. You know,
I appreciate that. Yeah.
You know, I could appreciate it. But then there was reasons why that law was passed. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, because employers were just holding people, hiring them, not giving them really what they're worth. But I think that depends on the recruiter, and that's where the ethical piece comes in, right?
Absolutely.
I love it when there's an opportunity to get someone to the level where they should be.
Absolutely.
Right? And if they're not transparent really with me about where they may be, it's hard to, I can only tell them kind of what our range is for the position.
Absolutely.
And still potentially be giving them lower than where they really want to be.
Thank you.
Without even knowing, but if someone comes in and they say, hey, I'm here, and I know that our range is here, ethically, I want to put that person on track, right? And I think most recruiters want that person to get the best out of an opportunity. We're not just hiring you to fill a head. No. I guess maybe some recruiters do that, but I think for the most part, we want to hire someone who we know we're putting them on a path and we can feel good about their future and where we know that their potential of where they can go.
I think that's probably like the biggest reward of being a recruiter for me, is that moment when I get to extend an offer and give them everything that they ask for. And like, you can hear the smile and the joy. But they're trying to remain calm, cool, collective, but they're like, they're going to play the game. Okay, thank you. Are you going to put this offer in writing?
Lives.
Right? And I feel like, and I just love it when I've
had some teary moments.
Yes.
Where it's just like, wow, I was able to really change the course of this person's life.
I mean, I think about some of the people we hired at the other company that we were working at, right?
And where they are now.
I
have an example of that.
I wonder if it's going to be the one I think, because let me hear.
I don't want to say his name.
Oh, okay. The one I was talking about is the female.
It was someone who we worked with at Ascent Media Group. We'll talk offline.
Okay.
Someone we hired as an assistant, I think. And he reached out to me the other day and we were talking, and we've kept in touch throughout the years. Like, we do lunch and coffee every here and there through the years. But when I was working in advertising at 2 companies ago, I got him hired in a relatively senior role. And he had obviously, left where we met him at Ascent. But he ended up getting hired and he's still there and thriving. And he was recently promoted to a global role, which,
they're like,
how good does that feel, to just know that you played a part in helping that person fulfill a dream and to start a career path. So I agree with you. I'm in it for that more than anything.
More than anything. It's just,
and that's why I love what we do.
I do. I really do.
We're able to help people. We're able to advise people. We're able to, I've had instances where I've told a candidate, I don't think this is the right opportunity for you. Right. Like, I see you see yourself here.
Yeah.
I see you here.
Right.
And here I. So hold off. This might not be the right position, but let's stay in touch. And again, that goes with building that relationship with your recruiter.
I agree.
Let's stay in touch so that then we can reconnect.
No, it's true. I think I have had, and even when I was working for retail briefly, and I've talked.
I know that was a challenge.
Oh, child. And I've talked to people that were there, and I listened to them, and I was just like listening, and I'm like, this job is less than you. Like you know, like you're telling me what you want.
That's a good recruiter.
I'm hearing what you want, but you're trying to convince me for this job, right? And so that's one of the things I feel like as a recruiter, like we have that ability to coach and mentor, you know, people and help them get a better perspective. Because I feel like sometimes people see themselves one way, and we're able to provide them with very candid feedback that allows them to grow personally and professionally.
Yes.
Because they're going to trust what we say, because our intent is to get you a job. Right? I'm not here to not get you a job. Like, trust me, right?
Which is funny. Yes, that's exactly it. We want to fill a job. Like, that is our job, to fill the job. And so you saying that it makes me laugh, because I know you can relate to this. How many times have we dealt with hiring managers who give us a bunch of crap because for whatever reason, they think that they should have 10 candidates, and the reality is that's an unrealistic expectation for any opening. Right? But how many times have we heard that they're questioning the process, or how long something is taking, or, you know, not being happy with a specific, with the candidate pool, or, you know, we hear that all the time. And it makes me laugh, because I always say, how do they not realize that no one wants to fill this job faster than a recruiter?
I said, I'm
working with you, right? I'm ready to get you off my back.
One of the things that I have learned is that as a recruiter, a talent advisor, consultant, whatever you want to call yourself, if you're in talent acquisition, that piece, when it comes to partnering with the manager, I feel like I've learned to really give them some service level of agreements that I hold them to.
Absolutely. They have to be held accountable.
They have to.
Because they look at us as service providers. And that's
absolutely. And I'm not here to check about.
Our partners.
Correct.
Two-way street. They have to play their part in the partnership.
Right. And I remember one time, and I realized this, when you have a hiring manager that has been with the organization for, I would always say, that double-digit amount of years, right? Their network is very small. It's only internal. They don't really have an external network. And that's where a recruiter really can then show them what they're made of. That is your opportunity to show what talent acquisition can do.
Absolutely.
Because we
have such a wide...
We have a wide network. Right? And that's also our opportunity to teach. Because sometimes when they're in that double digits, they don't really know how to use LinkedIn. Absolutely. They don't know which industry events to attend to, you know, because for them, those things have just come to them, right? Like they're no longer looking for a job. So they don't really, they're no longer networking because everyone knows them.
Because they're settled. Yeah.
Right. You know, I always feel like, you know, this is a time where, you know, you as a person handling, this is where you can educate. This is where you can take the rec and you lead, you know, and it's
educate, learn, and hold accountable on both sides.
On both sides, you know.
We have our vantage point.
Yeah.
So unique as a recruiter.
Yeah.
And I don't think people look at it like this, you know, and especially when I'm talking about career and growth. So often I've sat on panels with amazing people and they're talking about their experience in whatever industry they're in and how they've grown.
Right.
That is an invaluable experience.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes me proud to say that my experience is not just based on my own career path, right, as a professional.
Okay.
My exposure is multidimensional in terms of the different layers of the people that I touch and interact with on a day-to-day basis, right? So recruiters, we're really within a company, we're at the intersection of it all, right? We're dealing with the stakeholders, the hiring managers, the stakeholders, the team leads,
the HR,
and getting all of their opinions, all of their feedback, and understanding, all about what their needs are for a specific hire, right?
correct.
Then in this direction, we're dealing with the candidate, and candidates coming from different parts of the industry, and feeding us into that, feeding us knowledge in terms of, what's going on externally.
Correct.
Right? Then we have the lane of the networking piece.
Correct.
Right? We're still out there. We're still talking. We're having the conversations. We're keeping ahead of trends so that we know what's next, from an applicant tracking system to, a new tool that a specific department may be utilizing, right? We're seeing that. Whereas if we're just working with an engineering lead, right? And they know that they need someone who has Python or a programming language, something specific, right? Well, then as we're meeting with candidates, we're learning, these candidates have these specific skills, but then we're also doing the research and learning, do they know about this tool that has all these candidates who have Python experience in one place?
Correct.
Able to educate.
Absolutely.
The engineering expert. That's just one example. But it just makes me feel so fortunate to be exposed to every different angle.
It's true. And being able
throughout the hiring process.
And being able to leverage those 3 different lanes makes you a subject matter expert in being a strong performing recruiter, right? Because you have to be able to guide, lead, inform, recommend, and being very transparent, but also respectful, because at the end of the day, as a recruiter, you also have to remember, I'm going to give him the best of the people that I have found. And if you still can't make a decision from these...
The problem is you.
Right. I mean, there's no other way to...
A lot. We see that a lot.
Absolutely. The unicorn that they want. And I love it.
So unrealistic.
I love it when it's like a new role in the organization. And they're like, we've never hired for this role before, But
we need A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all Z.
And that's where I flip it on them.
The subject matter expert.
Right. I flip it on them.
Who knows the market.
Right. So tell me, I always flip it on them. So tell me, where have you seen this role? And why is it important?
And then the truth starts coming out.
Right. And how is it going to impact the business? And what are they going to, and I'm there and I'm trying to help them. I'm trying to help them help me.
Enlighten them too. You're enlightening them at the same time.
Right.
Right? Because you're showing them, and I have that conversation too often about the unicorn. If you have 5 criteria that you're looking for, we're not going to get all 5. The chance of getting all 5 is unrealistic.
Right.
So what 2 or 3 are the must-haves, right? And we can work from there.
Right.
Right. And then as we're researching, we'll still look for the other 2. Like, we're always looking for that total package, but realistically, it's finding the best combination and a balance and enough of what the core must-haves are.
I always call it the QA2, qualified, right?
Qualified.
and available.
Yes.
You understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what everybody wants. And so sometimes those, those three attributes you have to think about, is there potential in the other pieces? Because you're never
gonna find it all.
You're never gonna find it all. It's like dating, right? It's like, out and you're
it's speed dating. It definitely is.
And you're there and it's like, okay, like, all right, this person was funny, but nope, they're allergic to everything. Nope, I'm gonna move on.
And
so it's
every conversation I've had with the hiring manager around this, it's opened their minds. Because I also think about, and I'll flip it on them and say, when you interviewed for this position, did you meet all this criteria?
Right.
Hello.
Well, see,
usually
I
not.
About something else, because sometimes, I've gotten to the point where I've seen people hire for potential versus qualifications,
which I think is one of the greatest decisions an organization can make. It can't be the case for every position.
No.
But those positions where someone with potential, they're going to go so far, and add value. And it adds balance to a team.
Right.
Right? Because you don't want, and I always say this too, and this is why it's so great that we sit where we sit within an organization, because hiring managers say, I want A, B, C, and D, right? We agree on, okay, we're really just going to look for A and B. But then at the same time, through that process, it allows them to see the error in their ways, in their thinking, right? Especially as candidates start coming through and they start to meet people who are just great people, who would make great employees. And then they start to become a little more flexible in terms of what their expectations are. Because as a candidate, if I already have A, B, C, and D, what is my motive to accept this position?
I never forget when I was
for me to learn.
When I was at this other company, and this hiring manager said to me, I want you to what did he say? He said, I want you to be able to have the opportunity, not for this job, but for the job after. And I was just there like, and I was sitting there, I'm like, I'm playing. I'm like, this is wordplay, right? And I'm sitting there, and I'm there like, and I was sitting there, and this is in journalism, right? So you're like, you want them to write or you want them to get your coffee? Like, let me know. Like,
Right.
But what I understood was, the ability to really want something, right? But then the ability is what you do when you get it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that is the key.
Back to all the growth, what we were talking about, self-directed development.
Yeah, no, it does.
And it goes back to just depending on where you are in your career.
It is.
I've had those positions where I knew I was going to do a lot of tasks that were never going to show up on the job description.
I remember like very early on in my career, like getting these projects. They were like, yeah, Tanya, I just want you to do this. And I would look at it. They were like, yeah, so we probably think it's going to take us like 6 months. And I would look at the project and I'll be like, that's going to take me 2 weeks.
Right.
I'm like, what were you guys?
Did you document that?
Well, yeah, I had
to. Completed the project. It was yours, your creation, your asset. So then when you moved on to your next opportunity,
boom,
you had to take with you.
Right.
And 5 other projects that you created in the same.
And I tell people, those are the things you put on your resume.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Don't copy and paste the job description. Put what you did, because then I'm going to be able to question you. And then like, once I ask you about that conversation goes so deep. You get to hear who they worked with, what they did, what was the feedback,
Right. Well, the job description, it encompasses what the company thinks they want you to do.
Correct.
And what they know needs to be done to do for the bare minimum, right? To get the job done. But
all the in-betweens is
that's all you have on your resume. You did not stretch beyond
the job description.
Bare minimum, right?
Yep.
And we want to see, what did you contribute? What did you create? What did you develop while you were there? How did you make an impact? And that's where people go wrong. They don't add enough of that on their resume.
Yeah, and I
know time is ticking. And were you going to say one more thing about that?
Well, yeah, because I feel like that is so important. You highlight something about, you want to make sure that as you move from one career to the next, that you're able to show where you've grown, not just in the title, but more in the sense of anything that you could have done to make the process better, anything that you may have implemented or developed, or even just got rid of, because that says a lot too. Because
absolutely, if there's an antiquated system, a better way to improve a process,
absolutely,
the things we want to see on a resume.
Correct.
Right. Good. So I know that time, as I said, is ticking. And it's later where you are.
Yeah.
I wanted to briefly talk about just everything that's happening in our world around the Black Lives Matter movement. I put a couple posts up, and I have a few more that I'm going to put up in a few videos, where I'm starting this segment called Dear Corporations.
Really?
And it's, just the things that corporations need to know. And I posted something about diversity and inclusion yesterday because I've been at the center of those conversations within organizations. I know that you have been at the center of conversations at those organizations. I know, and I know you know, that it is not hard to diversify an organization.
No, it's not.
Levels. At all levels.
It's not.
We exist.
Yep.
I can find a head of marketing anywhere who is of color, just as I can of someone who is not of color. But it takes some research. People need to want to hire people of color outside of the obvious roles.
Correct.
So when you look at diversity and inclusion, I've worked in that area. I've been approached for many opportunities in that area. But the post that I put up yesterday was not to take away to any sisters who are in those roles, because you and I have been there. It's just a part of who we are and what we've done. And we still need to continue to be leaders in those areas. But at the same time, I strongly feel, and I've always felt like this, and so this is a great opportunity have these discussions now that the climate of our world and what we're dealing with around the Black Lives Matter movement, and just the fact that 40 million people are unemployed for the first time in our lifetime. We need to challenge these corporations and companies and make it clear that the onus is not on us to welcome in and bring people into companies that are rooted in systemic oppression and issues and systemic systems that were set up to work against us and growth. So what are your thoughts on that? And what is the conversation that we need to have with hiring managers moving forward to ensure that we're not the only people as women of color bringing diversity into their organization?
Well, I always, one of the things that comes up a lot in my intake, and I don't know, I guess for all the companies that I've worked for, except for the advertiser, where diversity was a really big push. So far that has been a little bit easier. But what happens is everyone says it, right? But what I realize is that when it comes down to the hire, the impact that I've seen is that someone that is non-diverse, who is a referral,
and
can
less
literally come in,
qualified oftentimes.
right, can literally come in and take the job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
that happens so much.
right. And so what I have done is I have then challenged that hire,
Mm-hmm.
challenged them on their decision.
Good for you.
You know,
we need to do more of that.
Absolutely. And
and not just because you are Black. We need recruiters who are non-minorities to be allies, to step up and call it out when we see this happening, because it happens all the time.
Correct.
Even with non-minority people, it happens. And I call that out as well.
I agree.
Because nepotism is alive and well. How many times have you been forced to hire? I don't really know if someone forced me to hire. I bring it up, but it still sometimes gets through.
Oh yeah, I have. Listen,
you've been forced to, put someone in a position who's into a position who's someone's nephew or cousin's sister's brother's nephew, who doesn't know anything about the industry and anything about the role, and they're set up from the beginning on a path to success.
I have seen like where we have been on a freeze,
mm-hmm.
and we could hire
is made
this executive referral. Do you know what I mean? And so I never forget this, but I remember one time in an exit interview that I was leaving. And I always tell people, take those exit interviews, because that's where you can really help a company grow, mm-hmm. right? And I said
let's explain what that is. So an exit interview, you were departing a company.
I was leaving a company, and they were
pivoting to your next.
Pivoting to my next.
You were meeting with an HR.
It was meeting with an HR, and they wanted to
about your experience at the company.
About my experience working there.
That's called an exit interview.
That's it. And so I literally said, we play the diversity role very well. It is articulated very well. But then when it's time for us to put our money where our mouth is, we make all types of exceptions, mm-hmm. to prevent them from happening, And I said, and so therefore, why are we actually pushing diversity when all someone has to do is make a phone call and they can just hire whoever they want? Mm-hmm. Because if that's the case, I said, why do you need a recruiting team? Why do we need diversity and inclusion?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because, and that goes back to the point, it sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds good. Oh,
inclusion sounds good, because it's good to say that we want this, but I posted yesterday, it's time to start practicing what we're preaching. Right. We're preaching all this. We're seeing all these companies post.
We're with you.
And that's great. And I hope that it's coming from the right place. And I'm sure for many companies it is.
It is, right.
But at the same time, what are you doing to make sure that it's happening? What plans do you have in place? There are 40 million people unemployed. The majority, I don't know the exact numbers and how it breaks down, but I'm sure the majority are minorities that are impacted. What are you doing as an organization so that when it's time to rebuild,
I had posted
you're going to have some plans in place to meet people outside of the comfort zone?
I had posted a question
and give them opportunities.
I had posted this question in my mind because at the end of the day, us as Black people, our spending dollar is about 1.3 trillion. That's how much we spend on clothes, sneakers, houses, cars, da, 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 da. That's how powerful our dollar is. Mm-hmm. And so, I always say this to the leaders. I'm like, if you want to see diversity happen, guess what happens? You tie that to people's bonuses.
Oh, I've been saying that I think we learned that back at Fox, right?
Yeah, because
that's how you hold people accountable.
Hit them where it hurts.
Hit them where it hurts. Get that money. If they need to have this as a part of their compensation.
Right. And I see some people could say, well, that's kind of like reverse racism. It's not reverse racism. What it is holding people accountable to the company's mission. If we are no longer going to be silent, and if we're going to be allies with a race that has been constantly oppressed. Right? Why would we not? Right? If you're saying that you are aware of your privilege and you're willing to now help, then you know what? Then you need to make your direct reports accountable. So it's not just him. It got to hit everyone.
Every level. And that's what is always missing.
And I'm not
talk.
Right. And I'm not saying that everybody that I present to you that is diverse, you're going
should be hired.
Right. I'm not saying what I'm saying is because there's people of all races that are going to be qualified and not qualified. But I want this hiring manager to really take a look at the core skill set of what this person can bring and not the color of their skin.
Mm-hmm. Which is hard. And that's what people don't want to address and face. They say, oh, I don't see skin color. I'm not making judgments, but that is
but you are.
In who we are as a nation. So you are making those judgments.
Right.
It's okay to be aware of that. And that's, I think you have to be even more self-aware so that you are able to interview fairly.
Yeah. And it's even within promotions, right? Mm-hmm. People of color we are assessed by how we are performed. And non-diverse people are evaluated on their potential.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's a great point.
And so sometimes, and
not even for promotion, I think that's even at the hiring level. We're assessed in terms of our core skills and do we really match? I would even say 99% of what they need immediately in order for us to be given the opportunity, as opposed to 50% skill, which non-minorities may be evaluated against, and 50% potential.
But I guess I'm looking at it in the sense of also promoting, right? Mm-hmm. Because
and it's the same with promoting,
right? Yeah. And some people, they're like, yeah, we'll hire. They'll have all these entry level, Black people, Hispanic people, Asian people. They'll bring in the white people, but who's climbing? Mm-hmm. It's all the non-diverse, right? And they want to they're not giving real feedback. They're not giving real information to help people of color
develop
or grow.
And that goes into the inclusion piece.
Exactly.
Because the issue is not so much, everyone understands the diversity piece.
Right, but it's the inclusion.
But the inclusion piece is what's missing.
That's what's missing.
Before where it's said, it's like you invite someone to the dance, but you never welcome them to the dance floor. Mm-hmm. You're inviting someone to the cookout, but you're not giving them a plate to eat. It's like, okay, now they're here. Well, they're here within the company.
Right, they're here.
There's no effort put forth to help them grow and be developed.
They're here. But are they welcome? Do you really want
ideas valued? Are they able to contribute? Are we, allowing them to execute and implement their ideas?
Right.
And, most of the time it's no.
Right.
Most of the time they're there and having to adapt to an infrastructure that is already in place where the majority is comfortable.
Absolutely.
And, it's, and again, that goes back to the entry level hiring.
Right.
I know that a lot of companies bring their diversity initiatives are tied around the internship program, revolve around rather the internship program and entry-level jobs. And while that is great because it puts people on a path to, you know, get in and learn, and hopefully their potential will be seen and they will move up. As I said before, we are not just entry-level hires.
No.
I know plenty of SVPs, EVPs, manager level, mid-management level, senior management level in all industries. So the time is now to put plans in place, corporations, dear corporations. The time is now to put plans in place so that as you are rebuilding your teams, you know where to go to find those people.
Absolutely.
I'm tired of that narrative. I'm tired of that narrative that we don't exist in a certain industry at a certain level.
But I have to be very honest. You know, I can tell you from recruiting and so many different business functions, I can tell you which industries are lacking diversity in certain roles. You know?
Oh yeah, advertising.
Well, advertising, even when
technology.
You're advertising, but the functional roles, sales.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Sales is up. When I tell you, for all of the companies that I've worked for and recruited for with sales, there has always only been 1 to 2 diverse people
1 to 2. Yeah.
on a sales team. Do you know how hard it is when you're looking to fill a role for a diverse candidate in this specific one, and you know all? What does that say as an industry?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they know everyone because they're friends and they hang out, and that's all they want to hire.
Right.
And so again, that's where it's up to us to call it out when we see it.
Absolutely.
That's our charge to our colleagues out there in recruitment.
That's our charge in our, you know, and so.
And for our allies.
You know, and I feel like this is a time where, you know what? It's a time for us as talent advisors to sometimes, we're going to have to make people uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to tap into people's unconscious bias, right? Mm-hmm. Because I'm not going to sit here and say everybody is racist or anything like that. But sometimes the unconscious bias in us doesn't allow us to
unconscious bias.
Doesn't allow people to see.
See beyond their biases.
Correct. Correct.
Because they're not tapped into it. It's on a subconscious level for a lot of people. And I know that there are organizations who have trainings for that.
Yeah, but training and actually
application is two different things.
Implementing.
And that's where the training is key, right? Okay, great. If they have the training, great. Make sure that your managers are involved.
Correct.
But come up with a plan and system to measure their utilization of that training and to keep them accountable.
For the training.
Weeks to come. You can keep them accountable to see how and where they've progressed in that area.
Correct.
Of how they've built and developed their teams through the year. And that's where it goes back to hitting the bonus, making sure that if they're going to receive their promotion, that they have to show that they've proven results through metrics and through change and an improvement in diversity.
What I feel sometimes companies do for the diversity inclusion is that they'll bring in 1 or 2 diverse business leaders, right? Mm-hmm. But then all of their direct reports are non-diverse. Mm-hmm. And then those direct
promoted,
right? And those direct reports, their team is non-diverse. Mm-hmm. And it's very important that, you know, when we think about that hiring piece, you know, people always say it's the top down, or no, it's the bottom up. No, it's the middle. Mm-hmm. Because not everybody wants to be at top.
Oh.
that all the
just had that conversation.
Nobody wants to be
with someone.
Some people want the responsibility
and
to
they're
be
happy being where they are in the middle.
being a team player.
There's value in that.
Right.
How many times have you heard a hiring manager say, they'll look at a resume and they'll say,
too senior.
This person has been, or too senior, or this person has been in the same role. This happened to me a lot in advertising at the entry level.
Oh, yeah.
Has been in the role for 2 years. Okay.
Right. Where they supposed to
been promoted yet? Like, well, let's dig deeper. Let's find out why. Well, it could be they had a new client, right? And so they wanted to take that time to make sure that they were educated and learned enough in terms of working with that client. There's value in that. It could be they got a new boss.
Right.
The person who brought them in left, and so their promotion was put on hold, right? It doesn't mean they're not promotable. It just means that internal circumstances are preventing them at that moment to move up. Right? There's value in that because they still stayed and they still wanted to learn and they still wanted to grow under that new leadership, right? So those are the questions that as recruiters, we need to make sure that we're asking, that we're digging deeper before we allow candidates, diverse and non-diverse candidates, to be disqualified from a process.
Absolutely. And it's holding them accountable at the end of the day.
Holding them accountable at the end of the day.
Holding them accountable, because I think, one of the things, and this goes back to COVID and all the recruiters who are here, this is a time where we have the ability to implement change.
Yes.
Change in how we recruit, change in how we consult with our hiring managers, and change on how we execute. Coming together.
And change on how we work together and the conversations that we are unafraid to have.
Right.
We can't be afraid to have these conversations
anymore. And I'm sorry if it's going to make you feel uncomfortable.
Good. It should.
It should.
We're all uncomfortable right now.
Everybody's uncomfortable
in the world. But guess what? We're seeing a change in a way that we've never seen it.
Right.
Because we're uncomfortable and we're not backing down and afraid.
What can you do now? What people are out there, what could they take away now? People already lost so much, and so, one of the things that I realize, and even as I look at I've spoken to other leaders business leaders who are diverse. When you're out there on the street outside of your corporate office, your title stays at that corporate office. It doesn't follow you outside. You are still just going to be Joe Brown, Mary Charles, and someone will look at you and feel threatened by just the color of your skin.
Absolutely.
Someone would be uncomfortable.
Yes.
And it's time for education. And this is not the entire world. And I always have to say that, I just feel like this is just a time where people are just tired. And it's time for us to be able to actually execute a plan. Make this change, because
especially at the corporate level,
and it's not like just donating.
No, it's not just asking people of color, what can I do? This should be everyone's issue.
Correct.
Period. And if you're still seeing it as a Black issue,
you're the problem.
That's the problem. Because it's an issue these are Black issues, that are being brought to the forefront, and that's that. That is, I'm so glad that things are, these conversations are taking place, but in terms of how we solve it, and in terms of you know, working together to find solutions, it is not up to us to, as Black people, as a Black, you know, culture, to make those changes.
Absolutely.
Up to us to solve those problems alone. And an ally isn't about asking what they can do to help us. An ally is seeing it from that perspective too, and knowing this is about all of us. And if we're all going to move forward fairly, equally, we all need to get involved and take a stand against these issues.
Yeah. And even within the workplace, you know, it's taking a step in the sense of, you know, if you see someone or if you hear someone, calling them out.
Calling them out.
Calling them out, nipping it in the butt. Because when you confront people right in the moment, you know, it's something that resonates in people where they're going to be like, oh. And what happens is everybody else who may have saw it or didn't catch it, they're now going to pay attention.
Yes, exactly. And think it brings to the forefront of their mind.
I mean,
everyone's ways. And
you know, and Charlotte, you and I both know, like, you know, one of the things of being a Black woman in corporate America is like there's so many things that we have to check ourselves in regards to how we speak.
Constantly.
In regards to our facial expression.
And even when we are being normal and just ourselves and just engaging in a conversation, if it's something that goes against what their expectation is for that discussion, it's problematic.
It's problematic.
And it's really just an idea.
Right.
It's as simple as that. It's really just, I wanted to contribute
my idea, you know,
to the conversation.
Yeah. You know, and not all of us are, you know, and not all just because you may have had one Black or Hispanic coworker who was bubbly and the next one may not be bubbly, that doesn't mean her value is less, because we are all different, you know. Yes. And I think that's something that goes into the inclusion piece. Like, we're all different. Mm-hmm. Every last one of us, just like how they are all different, you know, like we're all, you know, human beings. And I think that it's just time for us to really kind of pay attention to those things, you know. I've been reading so many articles, and I've been reading so many different articles and listening to people's experiences. And, you know, I have not personally experienced any of it, but I empathize in such a way. And I'm so like, I'm so aware. Like, it's such in the front of my brain where it's like, I'm like sitting like ready, not to attack, but more ready to converse, having that conversation. Yeah. You know, because people have passively been like, oh, there's so much going on in this world right now. And I'm waiting, right? Yeah. You know, and I'm no longer going to say that I'm okay when I'm not.
Yeah, yeah. And that's amazing, because so often, especially in corporate life, we've had to just say we're okay.
Correct.
Weren't.
Right.
And we weren't.
Right.
So I feel empowered to have these conversations in a way that I never have. Hence the reason why I'm using the Candid Recruiter platform to say, dear corporations, here's what you need to know.
Right.
And I'm no longer afraid that the employer I'm working for might have an issue with it, or, you know, my job is at stake, or I'm not going to be hireable, because I just want to be honest about issues that affect me.
Absolutely.
People like me.
Absolutely.
And ultimately have an effect on people not like me.
Absolutely.
Because we all have to be in together.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, and you know, I'm just so excited because I am hopeful for the future.
Yes.
I'm very hopeful because one thing out of COVID, if people don't understand and learn from this, is the time where you have to have grown as an individual, not professionally, personally.
Yes.
Because if you don't grow personally within you, how do you expect to grow professionally? How would you actually say, I'm okay to do X, Y, and Z at work when personally you have not been able, in this 3 months of being home, and you haven't been able to prioritize
look
what is
internally.
You said it. Take the words right out of my mouth.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm glad to be in this with you.
And I appreciate it.
Talk to you for hours and hours. We'll probably have to do a part 2, 3, and 4 of this.
Not a problem.
But I am so grateful to you just for being in my life. And I'm so proud of you and look forward to all that is to come in your future as a mom and as a professional, as a human being, and as a sister.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This has been, it's been really nice, and I really enjoyed it because I feel like there's times where you're behind the desk and you don't really get to share as much, especially recently.
Yeah.
So the fact that you invited me on your platform, I'm very grateful, and I'm thankful for our friendship and our relationship and our sisterhood and how it has blossomed.
Yes.
Thank
Same
you.
here. Thank you.